The first question, the dissolution of the 25 items, when does it tend to begin occurring? Range of time, few days before or month before. 마시고는 님 카시오 공 하면 마시고는 다와 카시오 공 팀에 고좀 거를 손들어 then doing you according to the how long can it tend to last? For example, few seconds, minutes, or days, and just go to sunarawa. Team of go to suna any 까마카시오 고거 까치카시는 고거를 까마카시오 고거를 니마카시오 고거를 배송도. Then the third part of the question, can a person slow down and speed up the process with their mind? 제가 아메리카 얘기를 봐다. 시 중어티는 고추 사서나 소스 생 손으로 다 교부 지게 팀에 졌다. 한번 팀에 대바 데뷔터는 파견지 용습을 해서 저 당부될 때 there are three parts to the question.
그래다디 당부고 가도 쪽으로 해야 돼. 당주 도스리 먼저 샤워라고 하죠.
랑 샤워라고
디 게운데 유체 옹보체 아니 담아다긴 스타시 디숨는 되는 계고라다. 되게 이거서 gen숨 세계와
랑
现在 로릭나 gen숨해야 돼. 디 계좀 쉬우차도. 유디 당주 배다 오브젝트로. 다겐 테마다겐데 아니 옹보 들어와다. 아니 겐데 테마다겐 옹보 유언남시 숨들이다. 유언남시 숨. 되나게다 수국의 종아 다 수국의 고가들 쪽으로 라디 되게 숨고 단단한 거 내가 제대로.
네.
유다 아니 옹보다 테마다겐 되게 되네 셔와게 디두게 소녀 지고라. 다 되나네 다 옹보 냠르디 당도 따딩다 배는 같은데 이거 참은 미시 잡고도 당에 옹보 냠도 와래. 다 오마마냐 간단하지라 미견 토하면 저 차르디다 르 옹보 냠르디 아니 르시게 르게 당보 르게 차와지야 되다 수게 냠로다. 어다 고족도 두스 고족으로 다 당보 고족도 르게 다 르완디 다 냠로고 당보 르고 옹보디 냠디 셰베딘 저 치미도 내가 고족도 아니 당보라고 하는 얘기다 당보디 내 고족으로 해서
So this question must be addressed with reference to how we generate a consciousness. Whatever consciousness it is, we generate a consciousness in dependence on three conditions: object condition, main condition, and immediate condition. So object conditions, for example, for the visual consciousness, shape and form and so on. And main condition for visual consciousness is what is called the eye sense base. And then it also, eye consciousness arises in dependence on the immediate preceding condition, which is the preceding mental consciousness. So now, so for example, okay, for the eye consciousness, as your eye begins to fail, not able to read as well as it used to be able to when you were younger. For example, now I depend on reading glasses because I can't see small prints. And so what does it mean? You can conclude from there. And as well as luang, when the body as a whole lose its efficient function, whatever function it is. So that's when dissolution. So dissolution may have started.
다 되네 투유 링동데 비지 다 디베제나라 로다 간다 란중 그 시도니 돼서 니마 숨제 된데네 걸고요다 니마 숨제 거
Yes.
칼레 도니 돼서 봐
Yes. So people who die a natural death, for example, not in accidents or on, then the dissolution process takes about 3 days.
다 투주 요보세야 된다는 주주 디베 주주 춘주다 가만히 숨시 가만 찍도 된데 회진 변하고 액시던트 니들이 여러
나를
다 두주 축스 찍나라 셔거다라고 냥아디 축스 베 찍질지 칭제네 간다 뭐진도에면 요지가나 다 조르고 있어라다디 디다 먼저 총청보래다 냠내 진이나 액시던트 진저도다 하고야 그러냐면 낙태면 돼야
So people who have violent accidents, then the dissolutions happen so rapidly. Do they occur? Does it occur? Do the dissolution process? Do the things dissolve? Yes, they do. But they happen so fast due to sheer speed. The person is not able to see the inner signs, so blacks out very quickly. So the people may die within a matter of a minute or two. No. So, the second set of 5 things dissolve was said to be 5 sense objects. Teaching shoga kishila anke do your what? Asur nga je sum time yor what kishila nga je sum thien na nga sum nga jig de ani yu ka se sense objects na jig su ta ti jo ra cha sha ra what Jason, how can these be dissolved? How can this be dissolved by a person at death when they are actually outside the body? Jason, tenju su da di ro di ani ji Michigan di kanisma te ko tim chu gre so ko su da di chil yor ba so
de chi di mare na
Jason, what is actually dissolving? Ani tim so gare tim go so
di 아데레 티원이 나신이 차서 데 숙다 티로지 란주기 되베 숙티 도르 유마들em 치기 중앙 추다 메달롱 된데 게제요 말아 다 란주기 되바 당게 팀런서 란주기 되베 숙 란주기 되베 다스 랍송아 란주를 쓰자 란주기 되바스데 란주기 되스 등한테 셰베 심베 숙다 티로 레제드레 셰베 심바 먼저 셰베 심바 셰와단 되어야 된게 디레메시지게 So, dissolution of 5 sense objects. 5 sense objects are rangyukudube, means consciousness linked objects. In other words, these 5 objects which are linked to one's consciousness. 5 sense objects which are not linked to the 5 sense to the continuum, which are outside, they of course they can't dissolve, but these connected with the 5 with consciousnesses, then they become they dissolve. So connected with the body. Duratan Zinana, Dick Halos and Ranju do my duke turn the Carolane. Call a never to do. I'll thought to get to me, Shiva. She don't get Luke Sukti. Get Luke Suktan, Chidan, Rodan to Zuk. Not till a never dona. I'll never to go. Chesa, Tina Koranju do a race de la water.
So what is meant by Rangu Ki Du means subsumed, connected by, or connected to consciousness or one's continuum. So when we study primary logic at a very early age, you study forms. So there are two kinds of forms, external and internal. And internal forms of internal objects are connected, are those connected to the continuum. So what does it mean? It means that when that form connected to consciousness is affected positively or negatively, the mind experiences that sensation. That kind of form, that kind of objects are said to be objects, sense objects, or continuum subsumed object. How about that? Continuum subsumed objects. It's good?
It's good.
I'm making a long phrase. You know. It's a mouthful. Compound noun. You call it compound noun.
Yeah. Really. That the team says that they
and this person said, what is actually dissolving? It is a loaded question.
Teams 그 반다 중앙 먼저 뒤에 단다 당기 쇼베 가서 사단 출랍성아 사출레 팀 그래랍성아 사출레 팀스 사드 중앙 주야게 해요 말아 그래서 당한저 속에 르그난게 사 중앙 사게 상감되게 남시기 댄시야 누바디 냠바르다 남시기 댄시야 누바 cik파 냠르도 표저디 숙처를 두고 열다 중감게 야세를 두고 열다 누가 숙처를 두고 열다 배나 속 풍부의 만냠르도 소야 풍부의 숙처를 두고 그래 메시 마 팀백이지 팀스도 파직 예외서로 진짜 거든데 말했다 거든서네 팀세야지 직도 들어오지 열데 전다데 누가 누가 냠바다 누가 숙처를 두고 데려다 간다.
So this word dissolve has no physical connotation of something dissolving into something. This morning, when we're talking about 8 dissolutions, earth dissolves into water. It is not that one's body, the matter part, the earth element component of the body actually physically dissolves into water component. That kind of physical dissolution doesn't take place. What does take place is the energy of the earth element to support consciousness weakens, and with the weakening of earth element energy to support consciousness, there's an ascendance of the energy of the water element. So that transition from weakening of one and increase of energy of the other has been called tim. Tim means dissolve.
나도 디틱디 시고야디 개좀 쇼레 단대가서 주시디 가나와 되네마 팀 gem냐 랍다 거와 다디 코던데 레나 아니 하고 다디고.
So once we get a clearer idea of gotten the meaning of this word dissolve, what actually dissolves, will be great help.
That's
done. In the hospital, most people die with a drip feeding water into their body. So how does water element dissolve into dissolve in these cases. Mangang Mambo the Mish strong to the gun, and it jigger that Tarkura, Jigdan and Chutan Toga, how does the water element dissolve? They comes any chu come to condition corsa.
추다마 먹어 수민분나는 예대이나 수부고 추감도 팀도 그래서 니워매워 차도 그러더래.
So here I'd like to say, let alone being drip fed, and if this person was submerged in a swimming pool, still the water element will dissolve.
그래서 그 좋은 충감디 남식이 누워치도 거 말이야. 추가져야 나 겨요 말다 걸.
So it doesn't matter how much amount of water they are submerged in. the energy of the water element inside their body to support consciousness, that is weakening, and that weakening process is called dissolve.
어디래? 되네?
Now once the dissolution process has begun, is it possible for people to retrieve or come back from these? And the June, the Rakpanyanga Timmy goes to Southern Rava. That Timmy goes on a Tim, the Kasha goes to Yangi to Tamshan to lawyer.
요 말다. 다디 먼저 풍부라고 할래 요 말다. 단다 풍부라고 할래 요 말다. 다 먼저 미 타과데 다 냠내다 추 냠내 마시니라 다 그겁제요 말이야. 직하요 말다 줘야래 그런 방제 가르이고 시하는 줘야면서 탑시요 말에서라 당보들.
So for most people who have who can't do this practice, in other words, there are who have not been able to do any practice, when the dissolution begins, then it proceeds. It can't be stopped.
다드네 안서 냠내시니 하고도 다든데 nga 라메다 냠내시 nga 지고 말 nga 라메 냠내시니나 아니 라와티제디 코나 뭐베 조단스나 국대에 그거 아다 동원신 바신 어디 다디 제가 야 고모로 잡지 사회에 속 말해로
나래
디 잘라도 마서는 다 못하는도 다디리셔 디규당은 또 곰잡디 책디지 심으로
나래
다디 용 다디 exam pass 쉬고 당도 트웰링 고션 상관 고션 다용 거로
나래
다 안사를 딜린 잡되더니 틱자고 그린 틱자냐 잡도 거다 안 담아들 심 담아들레데 다디 아니 하고 뭐 계제 아니 람냠낸 세지 독스로 거라다 다디 냠낸 신일면서라요 맞지.
So for most people, once the dissolution of the 5 items or the 25 course items begins, then it is a one-way process. And for those who have done a lot of practice in their life, especially in a death process, meditation, through their daily practice and so on, so they, for example, when the mirage-like appearance in a sign happens, they know. And now they think to themselves, now the mirage-like appearance has happened. After that, I know is smoky vision. And then they anticipate smoky vision. And after that, they know what comes after that. At the moment, I have smoky vision. Before that, I had mirage vision. Now, next, I'm going to have sparky vision and so on. So when they know what is happening and what has happened before then and what will happen after that, and therefore they have a clear understanding of what is happening. If it was an exam, as Geshe-la said, they are answering all the questions correctly. And therefore, when they are confronted with the most subtle consciousness of clear light, they also know now they are in clear light. And not only that, they are able to then use the clear light to arise in the deity form, use the wisdom and the energy associated with the wisdom to arise as the meditation deity which they have been practicing all their life, and then again then move onwards and upwards.
세상 딘주다 디용아게 냠네 다 계신부 님바디 딘데스 하고다.
So it is from this we can understand how important highest yoga tantra practice is, and how practice can play a crucial role to induce critical, spiritual realizations.
다시 나도.
Why are we not trained in the first three tantras as preparation for the highest yoga tantra, just as we learn the three lower tenet schools in preparation for the final view of the Prasangika Madhyamaka school? ngajui ani chigi oma thankyube drupde konya tundal ani chigi drupda oma sumchang goba na shin sirwa nga lame nyamne jebal nga jakyu jukyu na juju kandu garchin lobsin jigo marasa garchin dietol ani chigi jangsun training jigo mare besun
알래요. 다디 디더러 nen가로 디디리 다 단다디 자주 주주 nen조 주도zo nga라 쇼베 다 nga게 nga단 라메라 쇼야 탐랑 데스로 람사 지페 라메 람도 텐션은 도로로 가시 칼레라 다 람디 땡겨요 디 유튜브 유지 치 자와조 난거 자와조 지난거 자와조 세야된데 가네로 아니 자주사디 나한테 자원이 치 자와도 나 자원이 치 자와주 조 인식으로 찾게다 된데 시야도서 아니 되네야 아니 이제 주주도 나 지난이 냠도 줘든요 냠도로 같이로 와서 단 난조라메도 네 난게 자와 조 지고라 도신 시거래 다 디나라 구순 감지 마셔야 가르스는 말 유모섬라 디 뉴스 탐모 깨져디 셰요 시거만 다준 단단 뉴스 탐모 깨져 시거요 말로 제가 뉴스 탐모 깨져 시거 매 인자 유디오만 니 섬라야 기름 람냠네데 요마르 조름 냠네사 타녜데 요마르와 천제단 체메기 nen조스디다 돈니도 벌레 심베 nen조다 돈니도 벌레 마심베 nen조스디 디도 그러면서 먼저 라메드즈나 기름 냠네 조름 냠네세데 요마르 탄다 디 구순 람제데 람 기름 단데 제냥 자용고도 시디다 심타모게 냠네 시당 그림바디 람상 홉드가라 셰샤는 미도 도도거다. 좋아. 제가 좀 내에 탑겨 갈래 야티 탑론 레스트 게트.
So Krishna says the lower tantras are taught in order to lead people to highest yoga tantra, because if the content, the material pertaining to highest, the most subtle mind were explained right from the outset, it can startle unprepared, untrained people, and therefore the lower tantras are taught action tantra, performance tantra, yoga tantra. So these tantras focus mainly on things, external activities or inner activities, both external and the external and the internal. So these three tantras, they do not make reference to, or rather exploit or tap into nyuksim tamo, means the timeless subtle mind. And nyuksim means mind, that's the most subtle mind, which has timelessly present in one. So they do not talk about and tap into these. Because of that, there's no question of doing generation stage practice. Therefore, there's no question of doing completion stage practice. What they do is they talk about practice called meditation with sign and meditation without sign. That has to deity yoga practice done with the sign of inherent existence of the deity and so on, and deity yoga done with the understanding of inherent. So that's called practice without sign. Sign means without the sign of inherent existence. 다 그 깨지죠로 깨지라. 그 가르치는 디 먼저 장구가 말했습니다. Why don't we study?
가르치는 말에 자나 디고
Yes.
이내야 인지민지 나라면 가도 슈네 디고라. 야리 단도 베나 가시 지라모 도대와도 마자음시 튕주가 가도라 두냐요라.
나래.
디 제어해요 말에. 가시 발음 도고야를 가시 가도도야요. 딜레 제어해요 말했음.
So here I like to say there are those who can go sequentially and there are those who can go straight laterally to the top. For example, when you study the four schools of thought, there are four schools, but some with some momentum from the past, they can go straight to a Prasangika view of emptiness. So there are those who need to, and there are those who don't need to.
This is Jawangamaги leg dewadan de way yes ji namila tevadan kawodan yin tinde nyi kadu ngalami lam shurura.
So those who have strong momentum behind them from due to their practice from the past, and then such a momentum is expressed in terms of heightened sense of a conviction and a keener understanding of wisdom and so on. So such a person with the support of the momentum can go straight to the highest yoga tantra. Do 80 primitive conceptions dissolve when we go to sleep? 아니 군도 개중어도 니쿠도 템거 알았어도.
제대로 튕기지 마라.
라.
제 튕기지 마라. 다 차든 다워지 메시지. 군도 자주 tumga mara da de gal sim rawa de de ra
no sa
ka kundo ja ju timya de anzo shidu la da pena mi shidu go jik da yemi lam nyamle chini ge ne ta o men na shune tu chi di shugda ni ro
la
ni tu ni hu de da pejen tingo mares.
I would argue that they don't dissolve when we go to sleep, despite the fact that sleep is a subtle mind. Dissolution of primitive, rather 80 primitive conceptions, they happen at a much deeper level of subtle mind, and so that they only dissolve during the second phase of the 8 stages of dissolution, that is during the time of death, or they can also dissolve through the power of meditation by tapping into the chakras and the channels, those highest yoga tantra meditators. So they channel all the winds into the central channel, with the entry, abidance, and the dissolution of the winds in the central channel. Then 80 conceptions can dissolve while the mind, the person is well alive. In what stage of dissolution is the clinical death happen? 지금 member라와 다 미시샤 성조라와 아니 지금 아주 작반 영화 팀을 값서 가도 고주고 알았어.
that is jelly yung gore sil ne tan the test law test ta delibro your test ku as
Let me talk about it. We are almost there.
ti tan the test ku da le yung gore da
If you wait a little longer, a little while, we will get there.
ta tu mi do
That's awesome.
da the del ma do go le yung gore
So let's move on.
oh yeah ta du shi yi da de jin tang go de jin ni wo de song ta de jin sum ba de la du shi ji phung bo re ra du shi phung bo tin de yang a nim do tim do go ra
So the third phase of dissolution begins with the third aggregate called dushi, discriminating awareness.
다 두시 풍부 템베 치기다들 봐 치다들 가려운 거라서나 아니 수수 파마당 빈자당 촉보당 되저기 아니 된다 다 된다 군주 튕겨요 말다 간다
Yes.
아 파마든데 주 빈자든데 주 튕겨요 말다.
So as a sign, as an external sign, we are talking about external sign of dissolution of discriminating awareness. Now the person cannot identify patterns, patterns as patterns, siblings as siblings, or they are not able to remember names.
명마
Identify the person.
다드네 시두지 소르도이시 팀베달라 아니 소르도이시에서 가서는 안 저게 니드스스기 민소소 템베 샤바데레스로 네 빈자데 민데레 빈자데 민데레 알레로스레스 다디 네 시두 소르도이시 마팀인데 아니 되저게 니드소 민템베 샤지 테템베 따서 아니 파마소 니드 되저게 아니 민템 마레스다
알레로스. So along with this aggregate, then base wisdom called analytical wisdom. Analytical wisdom here means being able to remember names of things and so on. So as a result, anyway, being able to remember things clearly, analytically, individually, specifically. So as an outer sign of that, the dying mind or the dying person cannot now remember the names of their parents and siblings.
다 메감 중화 신안에 메게캄 메감 템베 치다스 네 르게 다 메트에 예네 아니 사동주가 다 지칼라사야다 텐데줄 쳇다 사두구면도 사동근과 다 냠바르다 사동주야 그러.
So as a sign, so that the next thing that resolve is fire element, and the fire element begins to weaken, and therefore means the heat element weakens. The person is not able to eat, drink, and digest them.
다드네 나와 옹부팀베 따스스 나고네 룽난데 뒤신 치르 타라 링도 주에 욱 생마 총스다 욱 남다지 레기도 먼저 디 미통걸로다 욱 남다 쳐버지 땅제 욱 파단 수담도 레기도 오다 디네가 되리데 다시 도지고 그래다.
So the next sense base that resolve is the no sense base, and as a sign, as an external sign of the dissolution of no sense base or faculty. Now the person has difficulty breathing in and out. It's quite hoarse, difficult.
Tilabdo, Didesri, Sevachic Soda, Ne Ombu Timbe Chidas, Nagone Luna de Shenjing, Chiltala, Ring the Jua, Ugdes, Tamadel Urin Stein with the Debdel Jingi Padang, Suma Dumadu Charoda, or did that did the Ne Ombu Timbe Tatingota.
So
Addition would they in Jimmy Magic Chagor.
As a sign of dissolution of the nose sense space, the person exhales short bursts and is having difficulty to breathe inhale, and so that's the sign.
Now the
fifth thing that resolves with this, okay, is Rangyugiti, continuum, self-continuum, subsumed sense of smell, and the person cannot smell anything.
Dadi chidaji, da nangda nangla su semna nawa khari shayan gores na, nangda su nanga dawi siro, nanga khana dawi siro, khana dawi shi jangsa, simbu mejir dawi shi, simbu mejir si tsana kongla bu di jalo mekin jo jiwa, lagro yame na, tugung na ne, tuwa ngopabe chungwa dawi semne, tuwe na ne meda ma tsik dinde yungudo. Oh, dinde nawaji, dan nawasimna, nawa dinde yungu yore, es nangdasu.
So now, inner sign for the dying person during the third phase of dissolution is fireflies or sparks flying amidst the billowing smoke from the chimney.
다 되네 다운도 되네 두지 풍부팀 베타는 tel 쇼가 샤오라다.
So now the fourth stage of the phase of dissolution starts with duji pumpu, compositional factors. Sorry, composition, aggregate of composition, compositional factors.
다 두지 풍부 냠베 치기다라 아니 류기 자와 구조 치미도다. 다 류 구조자면 요 차서다.
As an external sign of the dissolution of the fourth aggregate composition factor or composition factor, now the body is not is unable to make movements.
다드네 시드지 차룹지 시 자와드웨 시 팀베 자와드웨 시사데 코란 칼라고 쓰는 직딩 자와당 고바서 팀베 쉐와와 직딩 자와딘데리 다딘데리 스팅야드레 다디 팀베 지다딘 직딩 자와당 고바서 팀 가면 되겠다 낙통통통 자라고 그러라.
So what dissolves with this aggregate is base wisdom called accomplishing mundane outcomes, or just outcomes, or Jiao means accomplish actions. What does this mean is it's a consciousness that is able to identify the things that need to be done. Things that need to be done, or whatever list of things to be done. Now that faculty, that wisdom weakens.
다드네 중화 롱캄 중화 시나네 롱기 캄로 롱캄 템베 치다스 네 단당아조 롱데라 자외 롱아다 윤라 롱주샤 롱주나라 송징기 롱세라 송징기 롱주디 장게 다 닝가라 주 포도고 여러와 수불에 캡데 롱데 닝가라 포도시 다 옥치나게 교화체로 다 어다 디 딩산 제리베 멤베 시브리사 디네가라다 시브리스라고 왔다 옥치나게 교화체다 염다 레바의 구조자고 말 욱당겨요 말했다 닝 구조자고요 말했다 욱지는 그 조상만 채사다 디네가블라다 당길라서 티버디 랜데리다
So the element that dissolves at this is wind element, and there are 10 types of wind, 5 main winds and 5 secondary winds. So now these winds dissolve into the hard level of the chest, and with that, with the dissolution of the wind to support consciousness weakening, and then the person stops breathing, and that's when people are clinically declared dead. So this is an answer to the question: in what stage of the dissolution is the clinical death happen? It happens there, and brain function stops, heartbeat stops, there's no pulse.
다드네 옹봉에는 제 옹보팀에 따라 치달라 아니 제 봉보차 제장 옹보주로 제 봄시 제 통을 아니 제가 장 옹보차로 제장 음직하시 제리 격도 어디래다.
So now the sense base that dissolves here is tongue sense base, and the tongue now becomes thicker, shorter, and kind of lumpy and bluish at the base of the tongue.
Did you remember 가시 제 따그도와?
No.
No. Did you 다시 잘 나그도
No.
did 따고 그러다.
So that's why some doctors, they check the color of the tongue, and from there they can tell whether the person has died or not.
다 지메 지난주 다들 삽삽지 따면서 노제 라용하세.
So if you want, when you try to check in the future, if you want to check, be careful. Don't make wrong diagnosis. So make sure that the patient, the dying person, has taken medication that is blue in color. In that case, then the tongue could be blue because of the medication, not due to the actual dissolution of tongue sense faculty or tongue sense base.
전에다 란주 이데베 로틴베 치다서 제게 와다 로뇽모도 차로다.
Obviously, self-continuum subsumed object that dissolves its taste. With the tongue in such a condition, now the person doesn't experience any taste.
다치다지 다 낭달라 가래요 그래서나 네 갑디 낭다스 마메 바왔다 위시 차와라 마메 그래서 처음에 그 나 마메 달라 바와서 그러 아니 원래 마메 싫어시 카데 랩 지거도 어딘데 다치고
Now the inner sign during the fourth stage of dissolution is flickering lamp, flickering candle light or butter lamp. When the in terms of the candle, in terms of the butter lamp, the oil has almost run out, and now the wick is flickering with some light. That kind of vision is experienced.
다디 양장에 nemborosene de la timsa tangi shewna shire ne 사출레 팀 최멜레 팀에 팀 사디 네네 마 중앙랑가와 지도에 된다 말을 그 뉴원냠 봐 남의 뉴원냠도 치마디 뉴와 숙처로 떠버렸어 어딜라 남에게 세베게 된시야 뉴원냠 상감되게 먼저 류기 상감당 속당 저게 남시지에 뉴원냠도 될레된베 셰와디 냠도 그러와 대바 냠도 이 제게야 누가 세로 또 녀석이 야와 연구요. 뭐시야디 야가 연구래. 야한테 마팀데 두스 어두스 코덴데 딜랭 거요. 레스타.
So here I like to reiterate the actual meaning of dissolution, and dissolution here is not elemental matter dissolution one into the other. It has to do with the weakening of, for example, weakening of earth element, for example, to support consciousness leads to clearer appearance of the water element to support consciousness. So that transition, weakening of one, becoming becoming less effective, giving an impression of the water element has increased. It's not so much that the water has increased, it's just that weakening of one leads to clearer perception of the next one.
다 뒤에 제스는 신도 다 군도 자줄라야지 팀이야지 고den에 주고 했다. 지네마고 주고 뒤제일.
So after the fourth dissolution, then the dissolution of the 80 indicative thoughts begin.
다 딜라 갈라스나 나오 갈라마 차와말라마 녀도 나람바 신추에 위시스 다 디젠 스토거라 다 당보 낭제 톡숨 나라 나오 갈라마 차와말라마 녀도 나람바 디젠 숨 군도 제주데 딜라 여쳐고라다.
So the 80 indicative thoughts dissolve during the dissolution of their consciousness, subtle now, during the dissolution of the three types of subtle consciousness called Navakalamba, white appearance. The second is called Navamalamba, Chebamalamba, red increase. The third subtle consciousness is called Nyatop Naglamba, black near attainment or near attainment consciousness. So during these, during these, the 80 conceptions or 80 thoughts dissolve.
다디 나와 갈람바스야디 당보 다 나와 갈람바스도 갈라오스는 다셈나 나와 샤단디
다디 계실라디 팀르다데 당보니버데 응아바 들어와다.
레레 당아와레
나라.
시바드로 사라 다 뉴시담도 사서
나래.
다딜라 다디리 시방아와 레다 팀리 시바드레다 슬랍샤나 세우샤로다
지금 응아바만.
팀링아와
나지.
팀링아와데 나와 갈람바치
나와 갈마르걸.
나와 갈람바.
So now we are moving to the second phase of dissolution, of course, which begins with the fifth of the eight, and that phase is called Navakalamba, dissolution of white appearance.
다디 베딜라라 떠나 야타와라 사모 다외기 차바다외기 나와시르와 떠남스도 다 똥가게 다와디 웬다 타부 까르보 시부지 용고요 가스나 야가 차와 멍파르와
나래
차와파디 뉘디게마 밥시도 다외디 세부 시부지 용고라
나래
어딘데게 아니 다외기 나와샤보나 신지 어디 자시 딱 당신 똥싱아와 왜 가버라시 나와딘데지 샤고 레스타르와.
So what is white Navakalamba, white appearance consciousness like? To to talk about that, we need to use the moonlight that shines in a clear, dust-free autumn night. Because, for example, in dusty India, during summer monsoon rain settles that dust, and followed by now that all the dust has been settled, the autumn sky is really clean, dust-free, and when the moon shines in such a bright, clear autumn sky, the moonlight illuminates the empty space, and there's moonlight filled space in the autumn sky. It is empty, but there's also you can see uh, the effect of the moonlight filling the empty space, and therefore it's a kind of a white appearance.
다디 옌로 컨데 샤고라디 타비젠다 도실랍샤는 프리무라 되게 그생 먼저 자 우마로마 장마 셰임바
나렐
다자 오마디 지자디는 단다 먼저 롱 주고요 말이로
나렐
어디 자예윤이 담제
나렐
먼저 심타모디 자 우메기 닝게디 가도들라 잔다 제사지 디나라 데데다 콜레가 매우시 짝수 징지 데데로 자예윤이 담제 데데다 하디 담제 데데를 단다 두 데데라
나렐
다 당기 중화 지와디 치기 바바바바바 팀 롱디에도 주 닝가를 주 팀인데 아니 다디 지원에 마 닝가 이제 그 자두디에 들어오고요. 다 그거는 레왕으로 레왕 들어오고. 데데데 먼저디 지부들라 당부 팔레터에 감가보세요. 감가보디 지원에 마 체제 고마 틀듯다네 추난식이란 시지마 마슈겹제 데데요 그래서 다디마 님도라디 자디나라마 주제 다 용고요. 용데 자 디네 지분에 시 인가 이제 그 단두디제데 다 레왕기 또그 죄송하다. 죄운데 나와도 샤고 왔다. 데트 단디네 자디 단두디 죄두디 아니 팔레토베 감가고디 마 디나를 주는 거다. 자는. 주제다 디서블레도 거다. 디바도 나와 갈라마야 그 주제들이다.
So why does a dying person experience a consciousness called white appearance, similar to autumn moonlight filled clear sky? It happens because remember the cause, the earth, water, fire, air elements which normally support, now they have dissolved, and when they have dissolved, what happens is then the subtle, when that happens, through the force of a karma, remember the white drop that we receive from father at the time of conception, then which is normally located on the crown of head. Now that there's no pressure on pushing it up and keeping it located up there, with the wind pressure gone, then the two side channels above heart level, they loosen, they become loose, which normally they form tight, they twist around the central channel at the heart level, and now they loosen And with the loosening of that, with the loosening of the knot, at around the central channel at the heart level, and with the dissolution of the wind, with the pressure gone, then white drop, which by nature is liquid in element by nature, so it descends from the crown of head through through the central channel down to the heart level of the indestructible drop. During the descent of the white drop, because it's white in color, the dying person gets what is called, the dying person experiences consciousness called white appearance, which is likened to moonlight-filled empty sky. Not that they actually see moon, because their eyes are long gone.
다 되네가라 저 남시 풍부 팀당 그런 바들와 풍부에는 남시 풍부를 다 차라리기도 하대.
나래.
다 되네가라 나와가는 메네가라 똑바 숨주 소숨 팀도 왔다.
So from here on, or from the fifth stage onward, we are talking about the dissolution of consciousness. And consciousness, as you know, has different levels of subtlety. So anyway, during the time of white appearance, as many as 33 of the 80 indicative thoughts dissolve.
Oh yeah, that is how 처음만 한번 질러고 같은데.
No. So shall we stop here and let's talk about red increase later.
No, you have question, you leave here on the paper. If you have question, leave it in the paper here later. Okay.